And so this happens all the time. It happens with me all the time. Things that are burning questions that I have get answered at exactly where I'm editing my drafts of the Futhuhat al-Makiyah. Why was I created? Why am I here? That's the access point that we'll go to understand those questions. So the Futhuhat is a text which leads to those answers that Allah has, as Qada, has determined that you worship only Him. So there are two understandings. One understanding that Allah commands you to love only Him. The other is that Allah has just decided that you only are loving Him. And both of those are true. And if I see good everywhere, that's going to then diffuse throughout my body. So I'll have spiritual health, mental health, psychological health, emotional health, physical health. So Ibn Arabi is very, very clear that all of this goes together. These aren't like intellectual ideas. These are very physical, real things that happen to us. And so to read the Quran, to recite the Quran, is to enter in onto Allah's speech and Allah's speaking, on Allah's word. And to do that is to enter into the source of the divine, and then when we enter in the source of divine, we know who we are. So we know who we are because we are flooded in this light, and we are flooded in this love of Rasul. And so all of these come together. Because I am a slave, then Allah is the master. So that position opens me up to being receptive to when Allah, by grace, gives me anything, I receive it as the slave receives from the master.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم في سلسلة حوارات فكرية ومعرفية على قناة حيرة. We are honored today to interview the Dr. Shu'ayb Eric Winkel, who has dedicated his life to the first ever translation and commentary of the Muhyiddin ibn Arabi الفتوحات المكية, the openings revealed in Mecca, which is 10,000 pages of the original handwritten manuscript, which makes up 37 books of the complete work, and he's working on this project since 2012, and he's aiming to complete this project to 2028. So in the beginning, Assalamu alaikum, Doctor, and it's an honor having you with us today.
Alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh.
In the beginning, tell us more about yourself, your academic and spiritual journey, the country you were born in, and the universities you participated in, and your first insight with Islam, and then with Ibn Arabi, and with the Holy Quran even, and until you reached to this position where you decided to work on the project of Ibn Arabi and translate the whole great book of Futhuhat al-Makiyah. So let us begin to know more deeply about your academic and spiritual side.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah, I was born in Manhattan, Kansas, and pretty much grew up partly in the East Coast of the US, and then we moved to Switzerland. So I went to school in Geneva, Switzerland, and then from there I started going to universities. I went to Haverford College, where I with studying religion, and I also studied especially the New Testament text criticism. So I was very interested in text criticism. I was also learning other languages like Greek, Hebrew. I began to learn Aramaic, Coptic, Syriac, some the languages in order to understand the text criticism that I was working on. After that, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, the South Asia Studies, where I began taking courses in Sanskrit and Prakrits, Hindustani, Urdu, other classes. And so then in 1988, I was with the International Islamic University in Malaysia. We were asked to have 6 of us faculty members. We were asked to create a university. So it was a wonderful time. We had about a year to create a university. And so it was a wonderful time. And
really a university in Islamic studies or in general?
The International Islamic University in Malaysia. And so they had 10 faculties, including the revealed knowledge and human sciences. And so we had 10 departments in human sciences, and then the revealed sciences, and so revealed knowledge. So we were able to create the entire university, a small number of faculty. It was an exciting time. And then I also began to study more with the Arabic, the Arabi of Ibn Arabi, and I was able to meet people who were individuals who could work with me directly, and teach me what I needed to know. I also was just immersed in all of the classical grammars and classical lexicons, so like Taj al-Rurus and Lisan al-Arab and so on. And so with all of that, I became closer and closer. I knew that I wanted to study Ibn Arabi from way back in late teens. And then, so by 1988, that's when I began to really launch onto this path of wanting to study and learn from Ibn Arabi. And then, and in 2012, I received the critical edition volumes from Abdulaziz Sultan Mansoub from Sana'a. And so he sent me the critical edition. And that for me was the inspiration and the sign that it's time now to just do nothing but translate. So I dropped everything and did nothing but translate. And so that was the beginning of, and I saw it as understanding, translating, and conveying the Futuhat. And so that was many, many years of trying to understand, being at the door, knocking and for guidance and capacity to do this great work. So that's where, and then soon after that, in a few years of just totally on my own, I received the support of Sheikh Afaria in New York, who encouraged me to do this translation work, and then we published eventually with Peer Press, and now we've moved on to with that support, we're now publishing everything from the Futuhat Foundation. So all of these things are moving very, very quickly now, inshallah, and we'll have many books coming. We have 10 of the 37 books are on the way here to UK, where we'll be launching them in the next few days, inshallah. And then we hope to have the next 10 books to make 20, and then in 2024, and then soon after that, inshallah, we'll continue and reach the culmination and conclusion of this great work. So, and then the conveying will have to, which we're doing in parallel now, will actually also, it'll be time to convey. So I've been told it's not enough just to translate, you're going to need to convey this teaching. So that's where we are, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, very great effort. So until now, you've published how many volumes of the Futuhat, which is how much percent of it?
Yeah. So we have in the large editions, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So four volumes, and that's about 4 times 7. It's about 2,800, 3,000 pages, and so it's you could say it's about
almost.
Yeah, maybe at most, more like a quarter. And then the 10 books, they're out, and 10 books actually goes to volume 5. So what we're doing is working parallel. So each volume has the 2 books, and then the smaller edition has 1 book.
So your project was focused and will focus only on Futuhat, or also you're planning Fusus al-Hikam and the poetry and the letters and the other books?
So I used especially Diwan as in order to understand the Futuhat. But for me, I'll be studying and teaching the Futuhat. And in Indonesia, we have there's a possibility that we'll have the Fusus taught and the Futuhat taught. And so, but my concentration is always on the Futuhat.
Great. So, Doctor, tell us more about yourself, about your personal journey. So, your first insight with Islam as another religion, because your society is Christian. So, how you came to know about Islam, and or it was gradually by time, and then your first insight with Ibn Arabi, and how you came to learn Arabic and understand, because it's very complicated. His text is not easy.
Yeah. So I was a seeker from the very beginning, even as a child, and so I studied many religions. And as I was growing up, I studied sacred languages and sacred texts, and so I was very much always studying the original language of the sacred texts, and so that was very important to me all the way through. There were times when I would be in many different religions. So I've been many different religions, and following the discipline of those religions and learning what I can. And for me, when I was and I knew about Islam, and I had studied Arabic as well. And so when I came to Islam, when that happened, that was Allah showed me that all of the truth that I'd found in all of the religions and all of my seeking, that was under the umbrella of Islam. So that Islam was an umbrella, could understand and encompass all of these insights and wisdoms that I had gathered over the years, and that this would be the way that Allah would give me the way to speak of all of the truths that I had found in the beautiful mubin, the very clarified language of Islam. So that's how I always felt with Islam, that this was an umbrella that contained and encompassed all previous messages. And so, and in a way, Ibn Arabi for me was a way to come to those understandings and come to understanding of Islam. And so Ibn Arabi does say that he had the dream of the Kaaba, the gold bricks and the silver bricks going around, and there was 2 missing bricks. And he says, I am that brick. And so for me, this is to understand Ibn Arabi is to have access then to understanding Quran. And so this is the missing brick, is that for me to understand Quran and Sunnah, that I need to understand and move that direction with what Ibn Arabi teaches me. And that then is the access point to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to the Quran, which is his character, and to the Sunnah, which is his practice, and to this Islam, which is the Deen.
Interesting. And as a scholar who knows several languages and studied different religions to a certain extent, so what do you find like the evidence of the perfection of Islam compared to other religions? Because many religions can claim that they have high levels of spirituality, truth, wisdom, sacred verses, and morality, ethics, and etc.
Yeah, for me, Ibn Arabi is very clear about that the intellect is able to understand, can see truths everywhere. So he says very clearly in the Muqaddimah, he says, if you say someone has no deen, or they're a philosopher, meaning ancient Greek, he said that's not enough to say that we don't listen to them. They may speak the truth and they may not. So it's up to the intellect to understand what's true and to find the true where it is. For me, Islam is a gift, and so it's not an argument. It never was an argument for me, or a logical step, or a rational step, or a considered step. It's always been a gift for me. Alhamdulillah.
Mm-hmm. If you elaborate more how it was a gift, so it's a certain spiritual path or a spiritual opening that showed you something, or what exactly a gift means.
So a gift, as something that speaks directly, and so and you see the thing from the directness, and so Ibn Arabi talks about the special face of Haqq, which is in every created being. So when you go down there, that's the place where you can see the Quran was revealed, the Torah was revealed, the Injil were revealed. So this is a very special place. And so for me, what I find that to access all of these places that Ibn Arabi talks about, to access all these places in Tahajjud, in the third part of the night, to access all these places, it's the language of Quran and Sunnah is for me a gift. This is how to access here. And so the language itself, the way we speak, the way we understand the concepts that come through, the images that come through for us, these are things that are so rich and so encompassing, so that when I can take these encompassing visions and considerations and take them and understand all the things that I look at. So.
Interesting introduction, Dr. Shu'ayb. And what about Shu'ayb, the name you chose for yourself? So, and is it taken from the Al-Fasl Shu'aybi and the story there? Or please tell us about it.
Yeah, so the way it works with Ibn Arabi, it's certainly the way it always works. So I was asked, well, do I have a Sufi name or a name? And I said, well, okay, let's go look. And so I kind of looked at the Quran and came across the Prophet Shu'ayb. And then from looking at Prophet Shu'ayb, then I just say, okay, this is this. I'll take this, and that seems very suited to me. It's kind of given to me. And then years later, we're talking with someone, and they said Shu'ayb Abu Madian, and so I said, okay, now we know, because Shu'ayb Abu Madian is the the best friend of Ibn Arabi. So, and then I realized that this name is given to me as a hope for my part that I could be the best friend of Ibn Arabi, like Shu'ayb Abu Madian.
Interesting. And you have a special relation to the story or the personality of the Prophet Shu'ayb in the Quran, and you read about him more just to know about him and be familiar with your name, or?
Yeah, well, there are many of these connections. Yeah, and so it's interesting that given to me, and then years later I find out more of these things, why it's important, why it's there. So alhamdulillah. Well, I'll just stay with the Shu'ayb Abu Madian. This is the one that he met. So he met him, and so when I had an encounter, it was clear to me that Abu Madian was with Ibn Arabi, and so that made me feel very much energized and encouraged to do this path. And it also put me in the position of understanding how I approach the Futuhat, and I approach it with great respect. And and the work that I do, the translation, the publishing, the printing, everything, typesetting, everything I do, I want to be something that's respectful and an honor to Muhammad ibn Arabi. So that's how I moved there.
Great. So before we tackle some of the topics in Islamic mysticism and in the Futuhat, what's so important in your opinion in reviving and re-understanding and presenting Islamic mysticism in general and Ibn Arabi and Futuhat in specific for today's time, given all the difficulties or the struggles that we feel and face, especially that you're in the West? So what do you feel that what Ibn Arabi has to say to our era in religion and philosophy and spirituality and ethics in general? So what's the importance of a person who lived centuries ago for today?
So the way Ibn Arabi, he speaks about it being our time right now. He's looking for our time. And so I always, as I'm working with the Futuhat, trying to understand what it means by our time. And the way Ibn Arabi approaches that is he looks at the Prophet ﷺ when he passed the sunset. And so the sunset is when he passes. And so then after sunset, for Isha, there's a period of time in the dusk when there's still a little bit of light. And for Ibn Arabi, that existing light was coming from and passing through Hazrat Fatima, and in the third part of the night, our cherish is in the sky of this world, the closest ever. So the closest ever, our cherish is right here. And so this is the time in Tahajjud time, in the third part of the night time, when we are closest to the cherisher, to Rabb. And so for Ibn Arabi, he says that's our time. And so he always thought that it was not his time when he was writing. He knew there would come a time later, centuries later, when it would be the third part of the night. And so for me to look around, if you think about, 50 years ago and 100 years ago, things were kind of the same. But when you look now, you go 5 months ago, things have changed. 5 years ago, things have dramatically changed. Technologies, people who are born now have no idea what a record player is, what a cassette player is. They'll not know what this kind of computer is like, and so on. And so all of these things are changing so much. Technologies are changing so rapidly, and that's changing the way we think and talk and communicate. And so this is really a new world. It's a new world coming all the time. And then we see things like our brothers and sisters in Gaza who are suffering and oppressed, and we see this thing as it's always been there since I've been alive. But it's so dramatic right now. It is so clear right now. What is false, what is true is so clear. And then having all of the state powers saying what is false is true and what is true is false. And so this is something that comes up and tells us that we're in very much need of clarity of what is true, what is false, of compassion. We are very much in need of understanding what is the global geo situation that we are in today. And for me, what I see is that the people from the midnight, their teachings and their texts, they can still be, they're authentic, they're correct, they're right, but they're not very relevant necessarily for us today. So Ibn Arabi, what he writes is very relevant, and it's completely relevant. It's relevant even on a day-to-day basis. There'll be times when we're doing our line-by-line course, and we're doing the line-by-line course going through the Futuhat, and somebody will say, the very question that I had was burning in me all week was answered today when I read that line. And so this happens all the time. It happens with me all the time. Things that are burning questions that I have get answered at exactly where I'm editing my drafts of the Futuhat al-Makiyah. So this tells me this is absolutely relevant now. And this will be the teaching that this very strange, difficult, and highly volatile and changing time needs this kind of teaching, a teaching that is completely able to reflect what is happening and be relevant from day to day. So that's how I see the value of the Futuhat and the place that we are as the third part of the night.
Great, very interesting. There is also the dream which Ibn Arabi talked that he was, I guess, seeing a snake which will go to the east and west. And Dr. Shu'ayb, if I'll ask you now, and given your, I think you have decades experience with the Futuhat al-Makiyah, so what's the core point of الفتوحات المكية, if you just want to gather it or summarize it?
So there is no summary or abridgment. And so Ibn Arabi says very often, he'll say, I would tell you more, but I'm keeping this to be as condensed and as abridged as possible. And then he'll say that over about many times throughout the Futuhat. He says, I wish I could tell you more, but it's already getting long. And then he says, if I could tell you what I saw that one night when I had these visions, if I could tell you, I'll just tell you some of them, just a few of them, because to tell more of that would exhaust the listener and the writer. So he said, I would be exhausted trying to write all the things I saw, and you would be exhausted listening to all the things that I saw. So there really is, and he says that when you're writing from this place, from this source, then there is no end. There is no end. There's no conclusion. There's nothing like that. So logical things, rational things can have summaries, can have the bottom line and things like that. But things that are working directly in the source cannot have an end. They cannot have a beginning, middle, and end. And Ibn Arabi always says that. He thought we are starting in the middle of things, and there is no way that you can build up and then get to the Futuhat. The Futuhat will be open to you or not open to you just that way. There's nothing we can do to merit it or earn it or make it happen. And in my case, that I don't have the capacity to do any of this work, and so it has to be given to me. Otherwise, I have no capacity to do that. I cannot approach this text and sort of conquer it or understand it. All I can do is approach the text and wait to see if it's given to me. So if to then the summary or to say what is it about and things like that, it won't be about a subject. It'll be about something. And I could say then this is the way when you read the Futuhat al-Makiyah, what you're doing is if it's given to you, you're receiving a access point into what is true. You're an access point into why the cosmos is here, who is humanity. Why are we here? Why were we created? Why was I created? Why am I here? That's the access point that we'll go to understand those questions. So the Futuhat is a text which leads to those answers. And so the answers will be for you, for me, for humanity, for the cosmos. Those will be where the answers are. And so our answers can't be summarized or codified because each of us is completely different. Each of us has variation. We are all different and varied. So Ibn Arabi is helping us go to that place where we will then find our answers, and we'll go to that place where we'll find what is relevant to us. So that's why it can't be summarized or condensed. You can only dive in, and then when you dive in to this ocean, it will be, you will find, if with grace, you will find your answers and your meaning and your experiences and what is relevant to you.
Mm-hmm. So is there a focal or central point which Futuhat is concerned about? So for example, God or divine names or the prophecy or the spiritual paths towards God or the stories of the prophets also. So there is a central point that we can say this is what Futuhat about, and all the other points are connecting and are the details of this goal?
Right. So yeah, we could do a little bit of multi-stage. So the first center then is chapter 1, where Ibn Arabi meets his soul, and that's then the experience of what he has to go through in order to find his soul. And then when he sees his soul, he reads what's written on the soul, and what's written on the soul is the Futuhat, and that's his purpose in life, is to convey what is written on his soul, on the youth, and convey that from chapter 2 onwards, all the way to the 560 chapters. So this is what he is meant to convey. And then the teaching itself is, twice Haqq came to him and said, counsel my ibad, counsel my devoted slaves. So the counsel of to the devoted slaves is telling that Allah says, I am near, and I answer your prayers. So the counsel is what we also know from Quran. So I am near, and I am responding and responsive to my devoted slaves. So if we could say, is there one point, a central point, as you said, it will be the point around which is I am near and I respond to my devoted slaves. So from that, all of the Futuhat then can be seen as pivoting around, and like a kutub, like a pivot around.
Mm-hmm. So it's all about the path of Ubudiyya and the going through the spiritual path towards the closeness of God.
But for Ibn Arabi, it's always the other direction. Instead of me walking up climbing a ladder, it will be I will be placed on the ladder, and instead of me approaching Allah, I approach Allah with khairiyat, with good things and extra deeds, and then what happens is Allah comes towards me, and comes towards me faster than I come towards Allah. And that's for Ibn Arabi. So he wants us, he says, do all these things, do things that are well-pleasing to Allah, and do things that are devoted and extra dedication, nawafil and khairiyat. Do all of these things, and then watch if Allah is coming at you even twice as fast as you're coming towards Allah. Allah is closing the distance twice as fast as you're closing the distance. And then that's the process that we're looking for. And so when Allah does that, it's I love my slave, when I begin to love it, him, or the slave.
Mm-hmm. And according to the Futuhat, the spiritual path towards God is only for a Muslim person, or no, everybody can see God from his own situation and complication?
So yeah, that's a multi-layered question and idea. One of the layers is that for Ibn Arabi, who is a Muslim is there are many definitions, but everyone is a Muslim in the sense of our body, our skin, our tongue. Everything is a Muslim, is obeying what Allah says. And then there's those who choose not to do something for Allah's sake. And so that's something different. And then there's also the layer of those who Allah can gift at any moment. And so the idea of taqallub, that the heart can alter in any moment. So it tells us that we ourselves are not ones to evaluate and to judge. But if someone asks me for help, and they say, I need help from you, I want to know, how can I make my life better? How can I approach God? Then I'll say, if you understand Islam, if you know Islam, then that is the path that will be secure for you. And if you then accept Islam and move through Islam, then you follow that very seriously, and with great dedication. And if you were to follow Islam, then you won't be distracted and want to follow other kinds of paths. So the Prophet said that there are these paths, and follow this one. So there are many paths, and those paths, all of them will end up at Allah, because he is the Masir, he's and the final destination of all. And yet, so for Allah's sake, from Allah's perspective, everyone is exactly where they need to be, and and some are being guided, and some will be guided later, some are being guided now, and some will have to be guided from the grave, some will be guided after the grave, and so on and so forth. And so for us, from our perspective, we say, well, we want to be guided before we die. And so we want to die before we die. We want to know that we have reached what is well-pleasing to Allah before we die. So this is our goal. And so when it comes, so we're taught very clearly that I can't see inside people. So the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who's going to Jahannam, the person who's going to Jannah, it's known when they are a fetus inside the womb. And so, but the person comes out and lives an entire life of the person of the Jahannam. And then the last dying breath becomes a person of the Jannat and goes to the Jannat. And so that tells me that I will never be able to see what someone is. Where are they going? What's their destination? Who are they with Allah? So I can never see that. But if someone asks me and say, I want to be a person of the garden, what should I do? Then I'll say, if you understand Islam, if you know Islam, if you recognize Islam, then you will know that the way is to follow the Prophet ﷺ, is to love the prayer. And so perhaps the clearest focus for us is the love of the prayer. So that if you love the prayer and you do this, and you do the prayer, and you watch it, and you guard it, and you establish it, then you will be on this path that is the beautiful path. And then you are on a path that is well-pleasing to Allah, and then you will have the intercession, inshallah, of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, see, the difference is me telling somebody, you should do this, you should do that, versus someone asking me sincerely for help. If they're asking me sincerely for help, I can tell them, yes, I understand the prayer of the Prophet and in the deen that is well pleasing to Allah. This is how you do things. And I do this based on the gift that's given to me, that to love the prayer, and I understand the value of that. So that tells me something, and that is very different from me intellectually trying to tell somebody, you should do this, you should do that.
Very interesting. Dr. Shu'ayb, I have a question here about the centrality and the theme of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib in Futuhat. How do you see it? The importance of him, his spiritual level, and the relation between a seeker and him, and how he's presented in general in Futuhat.
Yeah, so Ibn Arabi he gives us the beautiful figures, and we want to emulate them. We want to see what they're giving us and providing us. And so the place of Ali is going to be a place of this is a very, very much a warrior for Allah, and someone who is so close to Allah, and he is. Then the archetype, I'm very interested in how genders work out, and he's really the man's man. He's the one who has this very strong. It is the way that men want to emulate. This is his way is the way we want to be, and so Ibn Arabi tells many stories of Ali throughout the Futuhat, and they're told for us, especially for men, to see, how do you want to be? How do you really want to be? What is the beauty of being a man? What does that mean? So that's very important there. We also have the other figures, and when it comes, it's very interesting with gender how all of those work. So with the gender of Fatima, this is like the woman who is very much pious and private, internal and quiet. We see these amazing spectrum of gender in these great figures, and so I think that what we can do is that we see them, and then it helps us emulate, because it tells us what more qualities that do we have that I want to emphasize and bring out.
Another topic will be here, Dr. Shu'ayb, is love. Love is very center in the Futuhat, and especially that the poem that's famous of Ibn Arabi, or even in the Futuhat, I think there is a bab which is called Maqam al-Mahbba. So why it's that central in the spiritual path, and how do you understand it?
Yeah. So the Ibn Arabi tells the story of the Shahada. When he tells the story of the Shahada, it's a love story. And so it's the love story of the one who sighs because she sighs because she's a treasure which is unrecognized and has to be concealed and can't be known. So a treasure, and Ibn Arabi says, a treasure can't be without a treasure chest. There is no treasure without a treasure chest. So the treasure chest has to be created, and that treasure chest, then when it's created, and this is the Nur Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with this Nur Muhammad looks at where he came from, looks at that light and says, there's no reality but you. So la ilaha illa anta. So there's no reality but you. And then the response is, and you are the one who show who I am. Because you show who I am, because I was a treasure without a treasure chest. I wanted to be you recognize me. And so this is the process of love. So the Shahada is a love story already. The Shahada is a love story. And that's why we don't just say one, we don't just say La ilaha illallah. Every time we say La ilaha illallah, we say Muhammad Rasulullah, because that's the love story. That's the back and forth. And so it's the back and forth of love. So you can see, we know that if you know that the Shahada is the basis of the cosmos, why we're here and what we're meant to do, then you also know that the Shahada is the basis, is a love story. And so that the why we are here and why the cosmos is here is a love story. And we can know this simply by having the text of the Shahada in front of us.
Interesting. So, and what to do with love and its relation to the faith of a person, or his ibadat, or the performance of the ritual? So how can love be involved here also?
So the love, so especially in the chapter on love, that Ibn Arabi looks at what's crucial is to look at divine love and natural love. So divine love is what the mother has for the child, and natural love is what the child has for the mother. And so divine love is, I loved you before you were born. So the mother loves the child before he's born. And then before the child comes out and has a handsome face or does nice things or smiles or anything like that, before the child does anything, the child is loved. And so this is a divine love, because Allah said, I will bring a people, I will love them and they will love me. So first I will love them and then they will love me. And so we love with nature love, and that is that when someone does something nice to me, then that increases my love for them. But divine love is whether you do something nice or not, you're loved before you were born. And so if you're loved before you were born, then you're always going to be loved. And there's nothing that you can do to increase or decrease that love. So this is where so in all of these statements, there's nothing that you can do that increases or decreases love. So what Ibn Arabi is doing is he's saying there are many ways. So you mentioned like ibadah. So so if I am a lover and the beloved is well pleased with worship, then any lover will want to know what makes the beloved happy. So Ibn Arabi will use the male pronouns because he talks about the use of male pronouns, because one doesn't in his context doesn't put a woman in a position where people are looking at her and she might be undignified because she's loved. So we'll just say it's he. So the lover looks at the beloved and says, what does my beloved love? And so the lover's preoccupation and total dedication is to what makes my beloved happy. And so if your beloved is Allah, then your beloved has a long list of things that make Allah happy. So the things that Allah loves, very clear. Things that Allah doesn't love the oppressors. Allah loves the people who bring the people, the relatives together. All of these things, it's a long list of things that the beloved loves. So the lover is focusing on those and doing everything that they can, because they want the beloved to be happy. They want what the beloved wants, they want. So but there's another aspect too, and as we said, that I loved you before you were born. So love before you were born means whatever you do doesn't increase or decrease my love. So then the Ibn Arabi then flips them around, the lover and beloved. He says, when Allah is the one who loves. So when Allah is the one who loves, he looks at the beloved and says, what does my beloved want? And then gives things to what the beloved wants. And then, but there also has a situation that Allah loves the beloved, whatever the beloved does. So then we have the saying that, so I have a slave who offends or sins or does something wrong, and he knows he has a Rabb who will forgive him. And so he asks for my forgiveness and I forgive him. And then my slave offends or sins, and he knows that he has a Rabb who forgives. So he asks for forgiveness and I forgive him. And then 3 times or 4 times, my slave offends, sins, and knows he has a Rabb who will forgive sin, and he asks for forgiveness and I forgive them. And then he says, do whatever you're going to do, I have already forgiven you. So we can just skip to the chase and skip to the end, which is I forgive you. So this Ibn Arabi says, this is when the lover looks at the beloved and says, do whatever you want. you can't increase my love for you, you can't decrease my love for you. And Allah says, if all of you gathered together and tried to do something, give me something good, it would not add anything to my goodness. If all of you gathered together and tried to take away something from me and make something bad, it would not take away from my magnificence. So this is Ibn Arabi. So this is those are contradictions, because on the one hand, I want to do everything my beloved loves. So I'm doing that and doing it and doing it. On the other hand, my beloved is saying, do what you want. I've already loved you. So this is where the contradictions come. And so when the people on the outside who don't have this understanding of love, they look at them and they don't understand what's happening. So look at that person. It looks like what's his ibadat? Well, his ibadat is whatever my beloved loves. So they don't understand what's happening. So.
And there are many contradictions in the thoughts of Ibn Arabi, so one should understand them precisely. And you mentioned here Ibadah, Mr. Shu'ayb. So how can we understand the idea of Ibadah and Ubudiyya in Ibn Arabi deeply, especially that he talks that all people, no matter who are they worshipping God, even the people who worship idols. And this is some people criticize that. So
yeah. So that's that. When we go with La ilaha illallah, we say that there are no gods but Allah. So someone says this is a God, this is a God. We understand that there is no God but Allah, and so people think that they are loving this or they're worshiping that, and in the end, though, that worship and that love is going to Allah. And so, from Allah's perspective, everyone is on the path towards Him. They're all going to come back, and they're all going to recognize that who they loved is Him, and who they worshipped is Him. That they're all going to realize that. So, but from our perspective, we don't want to be in a situation where it takes us all of our life, and then even we don't know it when we die, and then we have all of this time in the other world not knowing. We want to know that the who we are loving is Allah, and who we are worshiping is Allah. So it's and these, as you say, like contradiction or these opposites. So the opposites come because when you're looking at this perspective, this is true. When you look at this perspective, that is true. And so this is one of those times that, yes, everyone is loving Allah because there is no God to be loved and worshipped but Allah. And so they think they love their mother, they think they love this beloved, but actually love itself is from the slave to the master, and so Allah is the one being loved. They think that it's someone else. And so from Allah's perspective, that's where the love is coming. So Ibn Arabi takes the verse that Allah has, as qada, has determined that you worship only Him. So there are two understandings. One understanding that Allah commands you to love only Him. The other is that Allah has just decided that you only are loving Him. And both of those are true. And so commanding you is for, if I'm in a position of saying, which of these religions should I take? Then I take that verse and say, Allah has commanded me to worship Allah. Then that's my clarity. If I already am in there, then I realize that Allah has already decided that I'm worshiping only Allah. So that's how all of that works. And these opposites are, like one of them is like in the mirror image he talks about. He said, you look in the mirror and it's you, but then it's not you, and then it's not you. So we have you, not you. So this is how the mirror teaches us that it's you, and then the opposite, it's not you. And then another kind of opposite, it's not you. So we have a double negative, which is a positive, which isn't the same as you, is not the same as not you. And so this is how all of these, that's how we work on it. So we have to, when you read Ibn Arabi, you have to read and understand what he's talking about, what the context is at that moment. And this happens from the very first sentence. The very first sentence of the Futuhat has this contradiction or opposite going on, and a double negative is not the same thing as a positive, even though negative times a negative is a positive. So this is why Ibn Arabi is not logical, not rational, and is relevant now, because it is relevant now. If you take someone from the midnight, a scholar from the midnight, they'll say, it's you in the mirror, or they'll say, it's not you in the mirror. They'll take one position, and that one position is not going to be adequate for today. We need to have this understanding of that multiple levels that we are speaking on. And it's not just black and white. It's something that this is true and this is true. And then logically, they might not be the same thing. So,
So Mr. Shu'ayb, how would a person who denies that he's worshiping God and he's rejecting that, and he, for example, he's a worshipper of the sun, or of a certain animal, or for an idol or anything else, and then in the same time that he's in his existential being, he's a worshipper of God, while he's denying that in all terms, and he's saying, no, I don't believe in him. So how can we understand this contradiction? And is he on the right path or no? He's doing something, he's committing.
So that a person like that will eventually wake up and see the truth, either in this life or in the next one. And if it's in the next time that he sees the truth, his skin will say to him, I told you not to go there. His body will say, I told you shouldn't be there, and you took me there. And so in the day of judgment, the skin and the body and the eyes and the flesh, everything is saying, we told you not to go there, and you took me in a place that I didn't belong, and you didn't. And then the soul will say, I had a right to be guided, and you didn't guide me. You wronged me, and I have a right to be guided and be taken to the right path. So the soul will be angry and accuse the self of not guiding her, and the body will accuse the owner of the self owner, saying that you took us in places that we didn't belong. So Allah says, the soul, you are free, and body, you are free, because you didn't do anything wrong. It's the self who took you in the wrong place. It's the self who refused to guide you and wronged you. And so that self had been told, Alastu birabbikum qalu bala. The self had been told who their cherisher is, and they chose not to recognize that cherisher. So it's not the fault of the soul, it's not the fault of the body, it's the fault of this self who on the day of judgment said, oh, I wasn't aware of this. It was a covenant. And then Allah has the final determination, the hujjat baligha. Allah has the final determination, because Allah will say, you had a covenant with me. You said that you would follow, you would know that I'm your cherisher, and that you would accept the commands that I gave you to do this and do not do that. And you had a covenant. I fulfilled my covenant. See, Allah will say, I fulfilled my covenant. You didn't fulfill your covenant. And so that's the final argument. See, if Allah didn't fulfill his covenant, then the person can be scot-free. So, okay, you can go. No, Allah fulfilled his covenant. I will be merciful, and he fulfilled that covenant. I will answer your prayers, and he fulfilled that covenant. So in the last day, they'll say, well, I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware that I was in a covenant. And Allah said, you were in a covenant, and I fulfilled my covenant. So that's the final argument.
So, Mr. Shu'ayb, as if there is an existential code in every human being who is worshipping God, who is obeying God, who is يسلم, يعبد, يسجد, يسبح لله, as the Quranic verses say, whether he knows that or no, whether he's aware or no. And this is a great sign of the manifestations of God, because God, أينما تولوا فثم وجه الله. Maybe we can understand it in depth like this also. Even if from his free will he's choosing another path, but all the wujud is going towards inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
That's right. Yeah, that's why it's so beautiful that this deen of Islam is, it's not something that you convince someone about, because it's already there. Everywhere you look, there's the faith. Everywhere you look, you are worshiping Allah. Your body knows what is true. Your DNA knows what's true. Your molecules know what is true. So if the self is refusing, well, the self is refusing, and Allah can choose to guide that self or not guide that self. So, but the self refusing doesn't do anything to the rest of the world. The rest of the world knows exactly who Allah is, and the rest of my body knows exactly who Allah is.
So the path of suluk is actually only you have to adjust yourself according to the real path that is also is going towards God. It's only an adjusting point, or otherwise everything is towards him. Professor, we're witnessing, especially in the last decades, many Western people, professors, students, seekers, who are very attracted to Islamic mysticism and Sufism and spirituality in Islam in general, and they read Ibn Arabi or even other scholars. How do you analyze this phenomenon, and what are the reasons of that in the West? Do that because you're in the West and you so many people in universities. So how do you see this phenomenon and analyze it?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's interesting to find out what's behind all of this. Rumi was probably the first that's happened to, and then Ibn Arabi also. A lot of people are looking at that. And so they can see in Rumi and they can see in Ibn Arabi, you can see that there's a real richness there, and so there's a richness that is really unique, and so there have been many mystics and saints and writers of mystic texts and all of these things, but there's something very rich about these, like Rumi, and very rich about Ibn Arabi, and so scholars and Western highly educated audiences, they know this, and so they know their attraction to this. So they're and the seekers are attracted to this. One of the cautions is that the seeker, to be a sincere seeker, you really have to have submission, and so submission to Allah, and that also means respect and honor of the text that you're reading, and not try to move it out of where it belongs, and so not have like a poem from Rumi and translate it in a way that has no connection to Islam, no connection to what Rumi thought was important, because obviously Rumi was completely within Islam and as a Muslim, and that's how he spoke. To pull that out of that context is really unfair or disrespectful to Rumi, and so I see that this respect is very important, and it's submission, but it's a fact of the matter that the West in general, and intellectuals in the West especially, are very much intellect based. So their intellect is very strong, and the intellect wants to be able to pick and choose, doesn't want to submit. The intellect it wants to be able to pick and choose. So when they translate something, these intellects, they'll translate something, and then they'll come to a part that's difficult, or they don't understand, and they'll go ... and then they'll keep going. And so they go ... an ellipsis, because I don't know what's happening in this paragraph, so I'll just keep going. And that's what the intellect does. So the intellect says, I want to go at it, and what I don't understand, I'll throw it away. And what I do understand, I'll take it, and then I'll take it the way I want to take it. So intellects don't want to submit, and very intellectual people, they want to be independent thinkers. They don't want to have to submit to something. They don't want to have to say, in order for me to understand Rumi's poem, for instance, I need to be a Muslim, and if I'm a Muslim, I need to follow very carefully my ibadah, all of the worships, and then I'll be able to understand Rumi's poem. So there's that tension. They don't want to do that. The intellect doesn't want to do that. So I mean, and in the Arab world and the Eastern worlds, there'll be other kinds of things, but that's in a way the issue. The Western intellect is very much the one that is a colonializer. It says, I can go to India, I can go to Kenya, I can go here, I can go there, and I can take what I want, and I can do what I want, and then go back and say this is the way the world is. I'm not going to learn from anyone there. So, they go to India, and they're not going to learn anything from people in India. They go to these countries, these are colonies for them. So this colonizing of the political is also intellectual and textual as well. So they go and say, I want to grab this and take this text and take what I want from it. I want to take what I want from it. I'm not going to learn from it. I'm not going to learn what the people who hold it think. I'm just going to take it. And how often does that happen, that people say, I'm studying Islam, so I'm going to read the Quran. But why don't they say, well, I'm going to ask Muslims what they think about this? They say, well, what do the Muslims know? I'm going to read the Quran, and I'll tell you what the Quran is saying. So this is a danger that happens. It's part of the intellect, and it's something that's really, really widespread. And I mean, just think about it. Just how many times does a professor in a university who's teaching Islamic studies, is teaching the Quran, how often do they say, well, I talked to some people who are Muslims in Kenya or South Africa or India, and I asked them what they think about this? They don't go there. They say, I'm able to understand the Quran by myself, and this is what it is. And then they take the Quran as up as if it's a subjective thing. So that is that if you think the Quran means this, that's just what you think. I have my own right to think what I think. And for me, you look at the Quran and it's shouting at you. It's very loud, saying, "This is the way the world is." You can't just say, "In the opinion of the Quran, it's this way." It's not the opinion. Allah speaks in this Quran in the strongest terms about the munafiqun, about hypocrites, about all of these things. Very, very strong. You can't just sit back and say, "Well, they say this, they say that." It's telling us, it's saying, "No, you've got to deal with me directly." And so this is the what I see often in universities and so on. And that's why all of my work has been farther and farther away from academia. I've been farther away from the intellect, farther and farther away from academics, because if I were to, because I wanted to give the voice to Ibn Arabi. So throughout, I don't have any connections to academia. I get farther and farther away. And what I look at, it made my life harder in one way. And, just financially, like not being able to have a nice professorship or something like that. But what it did allow me to do is to give Ibn Arabi voice and say, this is what Ibn Arabi says for Ibn Arabi's sake, not me grabbing something and then writing an article and writing a book and getting tenure. So that's the difference.
Interesting. But on the other hand, also in the West, Mr. Shu'ayb, you mentioned the negative side of academics who use their intellect and work as outsiders, just like any other academic text, whether the Quran or Futuhat or Ibn Arabi. But on the other side, we also witness some very true spiritual seekers within the academia or ordinary people who read Ibn Arabi and get immersed in this spirituality, and they're very beautiful souls. And this is also a phenomenon. So how do you analyze this side? So is it to do with the lack of spirituality in places like the West nowadays? Even it can be founded in religions and in Christianity. Thus, when they face such true spiritual paths, and they recognize the beauty of it, and they totally transform and choose their paths towards God.
It's very interesting because they're wanting, they know that this is a text that they want to read and they want to study, and they love that text, and so then they have to find out how can I present that to the society that's around me. It's the same challenge throughout the world. I mean, if I were in Egypt or in Yemen, I would have the same kind of troubles. I would want to read Ibn Arabi and the Futuhat, but I have to be very sensitive to the society around me. Do they want to talk about tasawwuf? Do they want to say that when Ibn Arabi has this thing, am I allowed to say those kinds of things? So in a sense, the West is fortunate is that when they write about things that are really meaningful, they're not going to have necessarily have people in their city in Chicago or in New York, up in arms. Oh, this person is writing nice things about the Quran, because there's no sort of context for that. So they do have some space to write good things about the Quran, good things about the Futuhat, good things about Rumi. So it's a fortunate thing. And so that's why we may see more things coming out of New York and Chicago and San Francisco and different places, because they're able to do this in the society. And then in Europe, so they have greater means to do that in the United States and in Canada, so North America, and maybe less in Europe. And Europe is Islam is very much ethnic based. So someone is an ethnic group. That's what Muslims are. So there isn't the same idea that it's more difficult for a scholar in Europe, for instance, to speak out in beautiful ways about Rumi, Ibn Arabi, about Quran, to speak out about Islam. There isn't really a context that they can easily work with, because the context that the people they're speaking to are saying, well, aren't Muslims just Turkish people, or aren't Muslims just people from the subcontinent or something like that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very interesting. And so, Mr. Shu'ayb, let me ask you here about, throughout your journey, about certain spiritual experiences or insights that you've encountered in your spiritual path or in your reading and connecting to Ibn Arabi's soul. So it says, obviously, that you saw something or you felt something very special. If you would just tell us some examples and share with us, please.
Yeah, no, what I usually, you have to come to the line by line readings and things like that, because I do share my experiences, and I love to talk about experiences in those contexts. And so one of the ways that I gather with people, we have events. For instance, in the UK right now, we have a few events coming up, and those are wonderful times for me to be in a very intimate group, and then we can talk about things. It's really wonderful. And also in the line by line readings that we do, we're on the Zoom, and it's also we know the people. It's a small group. It's wonderful. So those are the places where I love to tell these wonderful stories and all of these and these mysteries and things that I've experienced. So it's really wonderful. So, well, okay. So one story. So one of the things that I would do is I'm with the Arabic language of Ibn Arabi and the Futuhat all the time. I mean, really all the time. And so very aware of it and awake, but even when I'm sort of unconscious or sleeping, it's all often there as well. So I'm really immersed in that. And I also have zero ability to converse in modern Arabic. So, zero ability. And so one of the things one of the people, he said that he grew up next to the tomb of Ibn Arabi, and he understood that I will not have modern Arabic ever. He said, because you have to have the Arabi of the Futuhat. You have to have that only, because otherwise I'll be getting terminologies and definitions which are late, which are modern and not based on the Futuhat. So that's that. And so I would read passages, and when I got to passages I didn't understand, I would read it so many times that it would just be memorized. And I'm not someone who knows how to memorize very well, so that's not a skill that I have. But I would read it so many times that it'd be memorized in my head. So I would go to sleep with this in my head. And then I would wake up in the morning and then go directly to the computer and start typing, and then that translation would come. And the moment the translation came, it was the way Ibn Arabi speaks in English, and then the Arabic that I had memorized, I forgot completely. So I can't even, that paragraph is no longer memorized, because now it's in English, and this is what it is in English. And so this is a way that I've seen how it's quite beautiful. So this is the path right now for me, is to be very open and receptive and flexible and welcoming to all of those things that will be transmitted that way, so that when I write it, it'll be, this is what Ibn Arabi says in English, and then that will be the difficulties that I have will also just move away, that will course away.
Very interesting, and I'm wishing you all the best. Also, in the beginning, you had an interest, Mr. Shu'ayb, in physics and mathematics and the relation to Ibn Arabi's sayings also.
Yeah. There's in order to understand the Futuhat, I did a lot of work, and I still do, on physics, mathematics. One of them is the non-commutative geometry, and that's like A times B is not the same as B times A. And this is something Ibn Arabi does with the Aleph. He says the Aleph, sometimes the Aleph strikes the Aleph, and in Arabic, daraba is to strike, is to multiply. So Aleph multiplies the Aleph. Sometimes it's Aleph, and sometimes it's something else. So you would think that A times A squared or A times B is the same as B times A, and it's not. So this Aleph times this Aleph creates a new Aleph, and then this Aleph times this Aleph creates another one. So it's not 1 times 1 equals 1. And so this is, to understand that, I began to study, learn more about how this works mathematically. And one of the ways it works is that we always think about the number line. But what if there's a number plane? A number plane would be complex numbers. So complex numbers are like this. So Ibn Arabi talks about things that are opposites, but the opposite of 4 is -4 on a number line. But what about a number plane on a complex number? The opposite of this number here could be here, here, and here. So there are more than one opposites. And then there are number volumes. So what about, instead of a number line, a number plane, a number volume? That is numbers that have 3 dimensions to them. So when a 3-dimensional number strikes another 3-dimensional number, strikes another 3-dimensional number, and now you have the 3 roots of the Arabic language, you'll now have a 9-dimensional answer, a 9-dimensional figure. So these are all things that I had to try to understand when I was looking at Ibn Arabi. And the other thing that I've done in the last month or two is look at the idea of consciousness. And there's an article that's been very helpful to me. And they're using the word reducible and irreducible. So irreducible things are things that are haq, they just are. And reducible things are things that are composites. And Ibn Arabi talks about the difference between simple and composite. So this argument says that consciousness is irreducible. So if a bunch of computers get together and they simulate a star that's exploding or imploding or whatever the star is doing, nothing will happen in the world because they're simulating a star, but they are not themselves masses. But mass is irreducible. Mass makes things, masses attract to masses. So that's irreducible. So they're looking at consciousness, the idea of the artificial intelligence. So they can pass the Turing test, so that they can speak to a computer without knowing it's a computer or a human, and it can pass the Turing test. I won't be able to tell, is it a computer or is it a human being? And so, but this thing is that there's a difference between the human consciousness is irreducible and the computer's consciousness, or whatever it is reducible. So it's reduced to getting feedback, having a storage, having memory, having a capacitor, having electricity, having these binary codes. So all of those things are pieces, are composites, and therefore it's reducible, and therefore it is not consciousness. So it can never become conscious. You can't go from a machine to consciousness, no matter how intelligent the machine is, no matter how much the intelligence is smarter than human beings, it still can't become conscious because that's reducible and irreducible. So I'm looking at this with Ibn Arabi to understand how he talks about things that are irreducible, things that are as they are, and for him it's haq. This is haq, and it's not contained, is not reduced to its parts. And the same way that all of the divine names are not reduced to the parts. So the Zat is not composed of Hay and Abid and Basit, and it's not composed of letters. The Zat is Awal, the way Zat is Akhir, the way Zat is Zahir, the way Zat is Batin. So all of those divine names are irreducible. So this is the way I'm trying to understand sort of contemporary thinking about consciousness and other topics in cosmology, quantum mechanics, and all of that, and trying to understand that as a way to fill out my understanding of Ibn Arabi.
Does Ibn Arabi has something to say about solving the modern problems of a person from the psychological problems that people face nowadays, like depression and other diseases, for example? So he has some sayings and thoughts that would help a person to get out of these bad psychological orders.
Right. Yeah. So these are all of the under the topic of akhlaq, of the virtuous characters, and he looks at how we can work with those things, how we can polish the heart, and how we can see affliction and difficulties that are happening to us, how we can turn those around. And so one of the stories he tells Abu Madian, Iblis is asked, how are you doing with Abu Madian? And he says, well, whenever I throw something at him, Abu Madian turns it into something good. So I'm like the person who is peeing into the ocean, hoping with the ocean. And so this is the image about how that we want to turn things around. And so this is a psychological way that we want to. Ibn Arabi says, when Allah says, I am according to the estimation of my abd, so let my abd have a good estimation of me. So when Ibn Arabi says that, he's saying this is not a suggestion, this is a command. So if you take that as a command and go through your life saying, I need to have a good opinion of my Lord. So when you go outside and something bad happens, you don't say, I'm complaining to Allah. Or when you see someone who's doing something wrong, you say, oh, look how bad these people are. You have to have a good opinion. And to have a good opinion changes the way you see the world. And if you go through the world with your self-talk saying everything's bad, I don't get enough, I don't want this, I wish the world were this way, I wish that, then that's going to be that's the definition in a way of depressions. And so, but if you go through the world with a good opinion of everything, then you are saying, well, I don't know what happened there, but I have a good opinion. Something good must be there. There must be something good inside that bad thing. And so if I can go through the world that way, it changes my outlook completely. And then the outlook changes completely, then that changes the whole body. And so this is also the way the Prophet ﷺ said that there's a lump of meat in the chest, that when it's healthy, the whole body is healthy. When it's not healthy, the whole body is not healthy. And so we're looking to what does it take to make my heart healthy? And then when my heart is healthy, my whole body is healthy. What does it take to make my mind healthy so that I see good everywhere? And if I see good everywhere, that's going to then diffuse throughout my body. So I'll have spiritual health, mental health, psychological health, emotional health, physical health. So this is, Ibn Arabi is very, very clear that all of this goes together. These aren't like intellectual ideas. These are very physical, real things that happen to us.
Very interesting, and I'll finalize with the Holy Quran, because you mentioned that the more you understand Futuhat Ibn Arabi, the more you understand Quran. In the beginning you said that. So which kind of special relation you found between the Futuhat and the Quran? Is it, can we say it's a kind of tafsir and explanation of the ayat, and he tackles the verses in a very special way, or he tackles it through his spiritual existential experience, and then he comes, can we say in a way or another that most of his thoughts are gained from the source, from the ocean of Quran?
Yeah, so for the way I see that the Futuhat is what Ibn Arabi is doing, is that missing brick. So in order for me to approach the Quran and understand the Quran, I need to understand the one it was revealed to. I need to know that the character of the Prophet ﷺ is the Quran. So as Aisha told us, that his character is the Quran, and that is means present tense. It is the way it is. And so, if I want to understand Quran, I have to understand his character. And to understand his character, that's when I go. Ibn Arabi is all throughout the Futuhat. He is telling us how we can approach and understand the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And when we understand his character, then we will understand the Quran. And so, you could say that the Futuhat is. We said in the beginning, it's answering our whys. Why are we here? What are we doing? What is my purpose? What is my meaning? And the meaning and the purpose will be in the expression of divine love in the Quran. And so to read the Quran, to recite the Quran, is to enter in onto Allah's speech and Allah's speaking, on Allah's word. And to do that is to enter into the source of the divine. And then when we enter in the source of divine, we know who we are. So we know who we are because we are flooded in this light, and we are flooded in this love of Rasul. And so all of these come together. This is why I read the Futuhat, and this is why Ibn Arabi has that position, so that because to be that missing brick, so that I can enter upon and receive by Allah's grace the character of the Prophet and the character of which is the Quran. So this is how I see all of this coming together. So alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
And as the hadith says, man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu, whoever knew himself, he knows God. And you said in the beginning that Futuhat, the beginning of the Futuhat, where Ibn Arabi meets his soul, and then he starts his journey, and the end of the journey is by knowing the reality of the soul. True?
Yeah. And so there are many ways that Ibn Arabi works with that hadith, and one of them is, if I understand myself, I understand I'm incapable. So I am incapable, and because of my lack of capacity, then I know that there is the Lord who has all capacity, because I have no power. Allah has all power. And that is the position that because I am a slave, then Allah is the master. So that position opens me up to being receptive to when Allah, by grace, gives me anything, I receive it as the slave receives from the master.
Very interesting, Mr. Shu'ayb, an hour which went very fast with you about spirituality, Irfan, and Islam and Quran, all through the lens of Ibn Arabi and Al-Futuhat al-Makiyya, which is a great project that you're working on, translating all these volumes and spending very hard times trying to translate such complicated texts. We wish you all the best in completing this project. And if you have a final word, regarding our talk today, please do.
Yeah. So alhamdulillah, I think it's so wonderful that this for me, this is a new audience that I'm now speaking to. I'm very, very glad that you made the suggestion that we could talk here, and because it's so very important it really is a world is in need of the teaching that Ibn Arabi is sending to us. And so, and each part of the world, each community will have their own needs. And certainly the Arabic speaking has their own needs. The Western intellectual, all of these worlds and communities have their own needs. And so I'm very delighted that any chance I have to convey this work to these communities. So this is how I do this through courses often. We have events. And have a look at the website, lilفتوحات.com. This is where I put all of anything that's happening. I try to put it there so that you can follow what's going on and where we are next. And right now, I just posted something on the website, and I got a call saying, "Can I come meet?" I've been thinking about these ayat of Quran that I want to understand, and I'm having these thoughts and dreams and understandings of the ayat. I want to meet with you so we can talk about them. What does Ibn Arabi say about these ayat? So this is the beauty of being able to say, here we are, and those who have been moved. And Ibn Arabi always is able to say his people get to meet. And so he has like, well, you're going to meet this person, you're going to meet that person. So alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Thank you so much for inviting me here.